The envelope felt impossibly light in my hands. Around me, my cousins were crying, not from grief, but from joy, barely concealed behind tissues and trembling hands. My Aunt Sandra clutched a letter to her chest like it was a winning lottery ticket. Because it was. 20 million, my cousin Derek whispered, his voice cracking with disbelief. $20 million. I stared down at my own inheritance from Grandfather Maurice, a plane ticket to Monaco, a key to a safety deposit box, and a handwritten note that said only, "Go see what I really built." Aim. My mother touched my shoulder, her face twisted with pity. "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry. I don't know what Dad was thinking. Maybe he got confused at the end?" Confused. That word echoed in my mind as I watched my family celebrate their windfall at a funeral reception that now felt more like a lottery winner's party. According to YouTube analytics, 99.6% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Grandfather Maurice had been the sharpest man I'd ever known, even at 93. He'd built his fortune from nothing, survived 2 wars, and never forgot a face or a favor. He wasn't confused. He was sending me a message. "Sarah got 50 million, someone shrieked from across the room. Sarah, who hadn't visited Grandfather Maurice in 15 years. Sarah, who called him that old miser at Thanksgiving. I folded the ticket into my pocket and walked out of the reception hall without saying goodbye. 3 days later, I landed in Nice and took a taxi to Monaco. The September sun glinted off the Mediterranean, turning the water into a sheet of hammered gold. The key in my pocket felt heavier than it should, like it carried the weight of secrets. The safety deposit box was at a private bank in Monte Carlo, the kind of place where the doorman wore nicer shoes than most CEOs. Inside, the manager, a severe woman named Madame Beaumont, led me to a private room with marble floors and a single table. "Your grandfather was a client for 50 years, she said, her English impeccable. "He gave very specific instructions about this box. It was only to be opened by you, Mademoiselle Caroline, and only after his death." The box was larger than I expected. Inside was a thick folder, another envelope, and a USB drive that looked ancient. I opened the folder first. Inside were documents, hundreds of them. Property deeds, stock certificates, bank statements, business registrations. All in my grandfather's name, but nothing my family had mentioned. Nothing the lawyers had included in the will reading. My hands started shaking as I flipped through page after page. A villa in Cap Ferrat, a manufacturing company in Lyon, shares in a tech startup that had gone public last year, bonds, gold certificates, art collection inventories. The numbers blurred together, but one thing became crystal clear. These assets were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. None of it had been included in the will. The envelope contained a letter in my grandfather's neat, precise handwriting. "My dear Caroline, if you're reading this, then my performance was convincing. I hope the ticket didn't offend you too much, but I needed to ensure that you, and only you, would receive this. I've watched my children and grandchildren for decades, waiting to see who inherited my character rather than just my name. Most of them proved to be vultures, circling for scraps, measuring my worth only in what they could extract from me. They visited when they needed money. They smiled when they wanted favors. They never asked about my life, my memories, or what mattered to me. I was a bank to them, not a person. You were different. You came every Sunday, not because you wanted something, but because you enjoyed my company. You listened to my war stories even though you'd heard them 100 times. You brought me books and read to me when my eyes grew weak. You asked me about your grandmother, about France, about the life I lived before any of them were born. You saw me as a human being. The will I read at my funeral was theater, darling. I wanted to see their true faces, to confirm what I already knew. The real inheritance is in your hands now. Everything in this box represents my life's work. The assets I kept secret, the investments I made quietly, the wealth I built away from their grasping hands. It's yours now, all of it. Not because you're the eldest or the most successful, but because you're the only one who earned it by treating me with dignity and love. Use it wisely. Use it well. And Caroline, make them regret ever treating you as the disappointment of the family. With all my love, Grandfather Maurice. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of vindication and rage and grief all tangled together. The USB drive contained video files, recordings my grandfather had made over the past 5 years. Family dinners where my cousins mocked me for being just a teacher. Holiday gatherings where my aunts and uncles dismissed my grandfather's stories as senile rambling. Phone calls where my mother asked for money while I sat beside his bed reading him Camus. He documented everything, every slight, every dismissal, every moment that revealed their true characters. Madame Beaumont returned. Your grandfather also left instructions for me to connect you with his attorneys here in Monaco. They're prepared to begin the transfer of assets whenever you're ready. I looked at the documents spread across the table. $340 million. That was the real inheritance, and my family had no idea it existed. I'd like to make an appointment, I said, my voice steady, as soon as possible. The revenge I'd craft wouldn't be loud or obvious. It would be surgical, calculated, exactly the kind of move Grandfather Maurice would have appreciated. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked with a team of lawyers to create a foundation in my grandfather's name, the Maurice Lévesque Foundation for Arts and Education. Its mission, to provide grants and scholarships to underprivileged students pursuing teaching degrees and to support public libraries in underserved communities. I endowed it with $200 million. The remaining $140 million I invested using my grandfather's strategies and the advice of his financial advisors. I kept my apartment, kept my teaching job, changed nothing about my daily life. To anyone looking, I was the same Caroline who'd gotten screwed at the will reading, the granddaughter who received a pity trip while everyone else got rich. 3 months after the funeral, I invited my family to a charity gala. The school where I teach is hosting a fundraiser, I told them. It would mean a lot to have family there. My mother hesitated. Sweetie, I don't know. Derek is closing on his new house that weekend, and Sandra's planning her European vacation. It's honoring Grandfather Maurice, I said quietly. There's going to be a dedication. That changed everything. They couldn't be seen skipping an event honoring their beloved patriarch. Appearances mattered more than I did, after all. The gala was held at a historic hotel in Manhattan. I'd worked with an event planner to make it elegant but not ostentatious. My grandfather would have hated gaudy displays of wealth. My family arrived in their new designer clothes, driving their new luxury cars, trying hard to look humble and grief-stricken. Derek cornered me near the bar. This is a nice event, Caroline, really. I'm glad you're moving forward after, well, you know, the will thing. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. If you ever need help, I could lend you some money. Family should help family. The condescension in his voice made my teeth ache, but I smiled. That's sweet, Derek. I'm managing fine. On a teacher's salary? My Aunt Sandra had appeared, wineglass in hand. Caroline, you should have contested the will. It was clearly unfair. Grandfather Maurice must have been confused, leaving you practically nothing. He knew exactly what he was doing, I said. She patted my arm. Of course, dear. Keep telling yourself that. The program began at 8. There were speeches from local educators, a presentation from the principal of my school, a performance by the student orchestra. My family looked bored but maintained their respectful facades. Then the screen behind the stage lit up with a photograph of my grandfather, young and handsome in his French army uniform. A video began to play, clips I'd assembled from his recordings and old family footage, set to the Debussy piece he'd loved. There he was, telling stories of building his first business after immigrating to America. There he was at family dinners, laughing at jokes, kissing my grandmother. And there, interspersed throughout, were recent clips. My grandfather speaking directly to the camera, his voice weak but his mind sharp. "I came to this country with nothing," his recorded voice said. "I built everything through hard work and careful planning. But wealth means nothing if you die surrounded by people who love your money but not you. I was blessed with one grandchild who saw me as a person, not an ATM. Caroline, if you're watching this, thank you for being the light of my final years." My family shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The video ended, and I walked onto the stage. My hands were steady as I gripped the podium. Thank you all for coming tonight to honor my grandfather, Maurice Levesque. Many of you knew him as a successful businessman, a war veteran, a pillar of our community. I knew him as Papa Maurice, who taught me chess and told me stories and showed me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. I paused, looking directly at my mother, my aunts and uncles, my cousins. When my grandfather passed, he left what many people considered a substantial estate to his children and grandchildren. Tens of millions of dollars divided among family members who measured their love for him in the size of their inheritance checks. My mother's face had gone pale. Sandra's wine glass was frozen halfway to her lips. What they didn't know, what no one knew except his Monaco attorneys and me, was that the will read at his funeral represented only a fraction of his actual wealth. The bulk of his estate, the true fortune he'd accumulated, was kept secret, hidden in accounts and properties across Europe, managed quietly for decades. The room had gone completely silent. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. $340 million, I said, letting the number hang in the air. That was my grandfather's real net worth, and he left all of it to me. The gasps rippled through the audience like a wave. My cousin Derek had stood up from his chair. My Aunt Sandra looked like she might faint. He left it to me because I was the only one who visited him every week without asking for money. The only one who read to him, who listened to his stories, who treated him like a person instead of a piggy bank to be smashed open when he died. He documented everything, every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every time you couldn't be bothered to spend an hour with a lonely old man because there was nothing in it for you. My mother was crying now, real tears this time. "Caroline, please." "I'm not finished." My voice was ice. "You pitied me when I received only a plane ticket to Monaco. You called my grandfather confused, possibly senile. You spent your inheritances before his body was even cold. New houses, new cars, expensive vacations. You celebrated while dismissing me as the family disappointment." I gestured to the room around us. This foundation, the Maurice Levesque Foundation for Arts and Education, has been endowed with $200 million. It will provide scholarships to students pursuing teaching careers, the career you all mocked me for choosing. It will support libraries and literacy programs in communities that can't afford them. It will do what my grandfather always wanted: help people who actually need it. Sandra found her voice. "You can't do this. That money should have been divided among the family. We'll contest." "Contest what?" I pulled out a folder and held it up. Every document was properly executed, every signature witnessed and notarized. My grandfather was evaluated by 3 separate doctors in the months before his death. All confirmed he was of sound mind. He created a video testimony explaining exactly why he chose to structure his estate this way. "You have no case." "But we're family," Derek shouted. "You can't just cut us out." "I didn't cut you out," I said calmly. "My grandfather gave you exactly what he thought you deserved. Millions of dollars you didn't earn through kindness or love or basic human decency. He gave you money because you were his blood relatives, even though you treated him like he was already dead." I looked at my mother, saw her crumpled face, and felt a pang of something that might have been regret. But I pushed it away. She'd stood by while her sisters called me the simple one for choosing teaching over finance. She'd nodded along when they wondered aloud what was wrong with me for spending my free time with that old man. The remaining funds are being invested and managed. Any charitable decisions about their use will be mine alone to make. And before anyone asks, no, I won't be giving any of you money. Not for emergencies, not for investments, not for anything. My grandfather trusted me with his legacy, and I intend to honor that trust by doing exactly what he would have wanted. I folded my speech and stepped away from the podium. Enjoy the rest of the gala. All proceeds tonight go to the foundation. And thank you for coming to honor a man most of you couldn't be bothered to know. The aftermath was exactly as dramatic as I'd imagined. My mother tried to call me 63 times in the first week. Derek hired a lawyer who quickly told him there was no case. Sandra posted a long, rambling Facebook rant about ungrateful relatives that her friends quietly stopped engaging with once the story got out. The foundation made national news. "Teacher inherits fortune, gives most away," the headlines read. I did exactly 3 interviews, all with education-focused media, and used each one to talk about my grandfather's values and the importance of supporting public education. The irony wasn't lost on me. By giving away $200 million, I'd gained something my wealthy cousins never would: respect, purpose, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd earned it. My life changed, but not in the ways my family expected. I kept teaching, though I moved to a better school with smaller class sizes. I bought a comfortable home, nothing ostentatious. I traveled during summers, always staying in the kinds of modest hotels my grandfather preferred. I dated a librarian named James who'd never heard of my inheritance and fell in love with me over discussions of Proust and shared custody of a rescue cat named Fitzgerald. The foundation thrived. Within 2 years, we'd given full scholarships to 200 students. We'd saved 17 libraries from closure. We'd funded literacy programs in rural communities across 3 states. Every award ceremony, every scholarship announcement, every library opening featured my grandfather's photograph and his story. His real story, not the sanitized version my family had tried to tell at the funeral. I saw my mother occasionally, strained lunches where we talked around the elephant in the room until eventually we stopped trying. She'd made her choice years ago, choosing her sister's approval over defending her daughter. Some wounds don't heal just because you share DNA. 3 years after the funeral, I received a letter from Derek. He'd lost his job in finance, something about risky investments and overextended credit. His new house was in foreclosure. He was sorry, he wrote. Not for how he'd treated grandfather Maurice, but for misunderstanding the situation with the inheritance. He needed a loan, just $1 million or 2. Family should help family, right? I wrote back on foundation letterhead, "As my grandfather taught me, help should go to those who truly need it, not those who squandered their blessings. I suggest you look into the foundation's scholarship programs. We offer grants for career retraining. Best wishes, Caroline." I never heard from him again. On the 5th anniversary of my grandfather's death, I visited Monaco again. I placed flowers at the small memorial plaque I'd installed in the bank's garden. Madame Beaumont had been touched by the gesture. I walked through the villa in Cap Ferrat that was now mine, breathing in the lavender-scented air and imagining my grandfather young and in love, building his fortune stone by stone. That evening, sitting on the terrace overlooking the Mediterranean, I opened a bottle of wine from his collection and toasted the sunset. "You taught me that character is destiny," I said to the empty air. "You showed me that the best revenge isn't cruelty, it's living well and doing good. Thank you for trusting me with your legacy, Papa Maurice. I promise I'm making you proud." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. In my pocket, I still carried that first plane ticket, now laminated and preserved. Not as a reminder of what I'd almost lost, but as a testament to what I'd gained, the knowledge that one person truly saw me, valued me, and trusted me with everything that mattered. My family had wanted millions. They'd gotten exactly that, along with a lesson about the difference between price and value. I'd wanted nothing but my grandfather's love, and in the end, I'd received something far more precious: the chance to become exactly the person he'd believed I could be, and the resources to make his dreams of helping others a reality. The ticket to Monaco hadn't been a consolation prize after all. It had been the key to everything that mattered. A final gift from a man who understood that true wealth isn't what you have, but who you are and what you do with the blessings you've been given. And as I sat in his villa, managing his foundation, living his values, I realized he'd given me the greatest inheritance of all, the example of a life lived with integrity, generosity, and love. My family got millions at my grandfather's funeral. I got a plane ticket to Monaco. And in the end, I got everything that mattered.